Beautiful sunrise here at Djuma Game Reserve. Welcome to our sunrise drive as dawn breaks. My name is Mark. Brian on camera with me this morning, and Nikki is in our final control. Nikki will be helping us out throughout the drive, sending me questions and comments and sometimes answers from you, the viewers, and we'd like to hear from you as we head out. We're in a really special little spot called Sandy Patch. There used to be a lioness that lived here with her cubs. Sadly, she is no more. In fact, there was a pride lion called the Sandy Patch Pride, but they don't exist anymore. But it is a little open area, and we've had some plovers complaining. They are nesting at the moment. I did see a nest a little while ago with eggs on it, and maybe I can find it again one of these days. Other than that, we're heading out 3 hours ahead of us on a beautiful morning, a little bit overcast. It's going to be breaking up. The sun rising is going to give it a lot of color just underneath this cloud before it disappears, but I think it's going to burn it open. I think we're looking for a really good day. At the moment, it's quite cool, quite mild. Temperature's about 16 degrees Celsius, which is about 61 Fahrenheit, and supposedly about an 80% humidity. I'm not really feeling it, but it is quite damp. I suppose that's mostly the dew on the ground. Let's go for a drive. A safari. Higher safari. I'm here because there were leopard tracks coming this way, and unfortunately he seems to have crossed the boundary. So we shall move on to a different area and see what else we can find in this lovely part of the world. We're in the Greater Kruger National Park. It's a very large wildlife area. It was proclaimed in the late 1800s, about 1898 or something. It was proclaimed. So it's a very old national park. I guess there was a bit of hunting in this area a long time ago, but for well over a century now, animals are being protected, and so the animals that live here ostensibly are animals that haven't experienced the hunting side of human life, and so they are quite accustomed to the vehicles being a passive entity in their lives as opposed to being a threat. So we're lucky enough that most of the animals we get to see accept our presence. Emails, questions at WildEarth.tv, and tweet address is #SafariLive, and that's how you can get in touch with us on the vehicle via our final control. Nikki will send it to me on my radio earpiece. Oh, there's a bird on the branch with an insect in its mouth, and a bird that is quite interesting. There was a big cricket that was eating, and unfortunately it is somewhat silhouetted, but it is a black bird, not a blackbird. It's called a blackbird. This is a blackbird called something else. Oh, I want this. It's a tricky one. This one. I can give you a clue. It's got a black eye. It would be nice if it flew. Interesting catching an insect so early in the morning. Off he went. Looked like a dark eye, but the tail didn't look like a bird that we normally see. We know it has a little black bird that catches insects. We often see it in the company of larger mammals, particularly there's one that I'm talking about right now. Oh, where are you going, Drongo? So we need another one close by so we can compare the shape of the beak, but also the shape of the tail. This is the fork-tailed drongo. The other one, well, it's debatable. The other one, probably a juvenile. I think it's just flown into that tree. Sorry, Brian. Okay, so the drongo, and there goes the other one. No, that's a barbet. That's a crested barbet. It's just following the drongo. You see the little Mohican hairstyle of the crested barbet. These little crests. Still far away. Hopefully we can find some birds closer to the camera. Now, Georgiana in Illinois was saying that was a black tit. Now, there's the southern black tit. Sorry, Brian, really working hard this morning with the birds. That is a black tit sitting there, the southern black tit, just flittering through the branch. You can see how active it is. It's got a white along the shoulder, and it talks a lot when it's hopping through the branches. And they don't sit still for a minute. And there's a brew too, that one up on the top right there. That one is called a brew. It's a type of shrike. A lot of insect eaters all spending time together, what we call a little bird party, mixed bird party. And much like we see giraffe and zebra and wildebeest and impala together and helping each other as far as danger, looking out for danger is concerned, we often have birds that spend time feeding together in these mixed bird parties. And of course, one of the reasons for that is also because more eyes, more ears. After all, there are a lot of predators out here of birds, whether they're snakes or small cats or other birds, eagles and things. They've also got to look out for danger. And even though you'll find a lot of insect eaters together, they have different ways of catching those insects, and sometimes they even, I wouldn't say assist, but sometimes the one bird's feeding habits tend to give the advantage to another type of bird that feeds in a different way. For example, an insect eater that hops through the trees like the brew, that was a brew we saw, brew, and it tends to glean insects off leaves and branches. Sometimes something might fly away from the tree, and that's when the flycatcher or the drongo or one of the other birds that catch insects in flight, could be eaters as well, they're likely to catch it if something flies away. So they do complement each other somewhat in that respect. And it's nice sometimes to just stop and see how many different species you can see in a bird party. You might even get seed eaters on the ground who are comfortable being in the grasses, the little blue waxbills and little firefinches. Comfortable in the grasses because all the insect eaters are hopping around the trees and being very vigilant.
seems I might have caused a little bit of confusion because so many, well, three black colored birds in the space of a couple of minutes. First one was what I thought was, oh, interesting, and a squirrel shouting, snake track in the road. First one was what was a bird that I wasn't sure of because it looked quite small, all black. It didn't have a forked tail like a drongo, and what I could see, it had a dark eye, but I can't be sure. So I thought it could have been a black flycatcher. The second one was the fork-tailed drongo. Third one was the crested barbet, and then there was the southern black tit, and after that we saw the brew, a shrike. But I guess we're going to have to put a question mark against the first one, whether it was indeed a black flycatcher or a juvenile fork-tailed drongo. Big water. Maybe we'll stay there if we stop at a distance. Nice long shot to the water. Let's see. There you go. Oh, I'm already running. Okay, maybe if we just go gently. Unusually shy. Still see him. It would be nice to just take this little trek. Maybe we'll see him. But if we don't see him, we're going to see something else. A beautiful view over Djuma towards the Kruger National Park. Somebody asked me about mushrooms the other day. I'll show you something as soon as we're done looking at this beautiful sunrise. Skies. There are hornbills alarming. Well, not alarming, but they're chattering. I wake up to that sound when there's an owl in my yard. And an impala. Something's alarming. I heard a squirrel earlier. There's an impala alarming where those hornbills are making a noise. Maybe we ought to go back and have a look. I'm going to turn around and show you. There have been some mushrooms that have come out in the elephant dung and some of the other middens. Let's see what the fuss is about back this way. Where was that? here on the left. I can't see it. There's a collapsed mushroom on the top of that elephant bolus. But the other one's on the other side of it. We won't be able to see them. We'll look for more. Nice moist morning to look for them. I'm going to stop and listen again. I want to hear these hornbills. And maybe that impala that was alarming. They're much further in. Not going to be able to get that far in just on a whim. Well, now it's possible that something might be making its way from this area, heading up towards Impala Plains, or even the road from Impala Plains to Sandy Patch. So maybe it's a good idea to do a loop around there. We're currently on Zoe's Road, heading south, and maybe it's a good idea. Let's go and do that. I think there isn't really a plan until something turns up, and that sounds like a good idea. Otherwise, it's all open to investigation when we get to a junction to try and decide which way to go. But if we take a drive around this, what we call a block, this area of bush on my right, we might pick up some more clues. Temperature is dropping a bit, always does just after the sun comes up. I guess getting to near the end of fall or autumn. Morning, Mary. Mary sent a tweet asking if we get morel mushrooms. I have never heard of them, Mary, but I can look in my mushroom book. I'm afraid I don't know what they are. my knowledge of mushrooms isn't really good. That's great. That's why I like to look at them and then try to identify them. So, see if I can find my mushroom book. If you could spell that for me, that would be easier. If one of the viewers could let me know how is it spelled. As in moral. Morel. That sounds familiar. Morel mushroom. No, we don't. Nothing in my mushroom book about that. I guess short of having a description, something I'm going to have to remember to look up. I'm seeing some dung in the road. I'm going to go and check. There's probably some footprints that go with it. And then it was wildebeest dung, and wildebeest footprint coming from the open area and going down Zoe's Road, and we will eventually head that way perhaps, but I just wanted to make sure that we didn't need to divert from our plan for now. Sarah in California. Morning, Sarah. Were they edible, those mushrooms? I don't even know which ones they were. That's why I wanted to stop and get a picture of them so that I could look them up. I couldn't tell you which mushrooms are edible or not. And I do know that there are a number of mushrooms that are poisonous that look like edible mushrooms. And unless you know your mushrooms, especially out here, I wouldn't be tasting any mushrooms, especially me. I'm not much of a mushroom fan in terms of eating them. I like to know, because they're part of the environment, they perform such a vital function in the environment. I'm interested in them. Mushroom or fungi are one of the organisms that are responsible for the breakdown of plant matter, of cellulose, the very thing that gives rigidity and structure to plants. No, I mean, as much as animals, or whether they're herbivores or omnivores, as much as animals can chew plants, they can't break down that cellulose. And only bacteria and fungi can do that, and it is vital to get everything converted back into trace elements in the soil. I mean, look at this marula tree. This was a marula tree that fell down here, and slowly but surely it's decomposing. And a lot of this decomposition is being done through the process of, well, from termites and wood borer beetle larvae. There are a number of holes throughout the wood that are evidence of various different species of beetles. Some of them very, very large. Some of those tunnels are fat enough to put a finger in, although one should never do that, because you get carpenter bees that also drill holes. And I've known so many children to get their fingers stung because they poke them in a hole in a tree. I suppose the odd adult too. And yes, I've done it myself. No fungus on this marula at the moment, but it is slowly breaking down. Imagine if we could have time-lapse photography here over a decade, and to see not only how it breaks down, but what comes out of the soil, and how much richer it is for the breaking down of this dead wood. Fungus is a very important part of that. In fact, you will get different types of fungi that act on different densities of wood, or different trees, different plants. And I'll see if I can find some others as we move along on our journey this morning. A lot of people have sent through descriptions of these morel mushrooms, morchella, from North America. Donna, thanks Donna as well for a description that it looks like honeycomb or a brain kind of texture. Now, the idea, of course, is getting back to the basics. I'm glad you sent that in, because that helps me. I could probably page through my book and find something similar, but there is an easier way. And so I'm going to ask for your help, and again, to further our talk about morel mushrooms, and you're teaching me something about a mushroom in North America. If you could tell me the scientific name, or send it to Nikki, and she can spell it out to me. And I'm pretty sure I might find something that is South African, and maybe an equivalent. South African equivalent. Oh, I've got to fix this book. Bindings, the cover's coming off. Morchella esculenta. Thank you very much. The name is Wilma. Oh, Wilma. Wilma in Washington. I think wanting to know if the lilac-breasted roller migrates. No, it doesn't. My lilac-breasted rollers are resident all year round, and now in the dry season they have freedom from their migrating European cousins, who tend to dominate. But we have a couple of other resident resident rollers. We also have the Mozambique roller. It's the only other resident, also known as the purple roller. Purple, not lilac, but it's purple pretty much all over. It's an eagle. And already from this distance I can see what type of eagle it is. If we get a long shot of it, you'll be able to see it yourselves. Those of you who are birders, the upright posture and we might even get closer to it as we go around this open area. It is very far away, but it is such a distinct eagle, there isn't anyone like it. And it hunts from a perch, as opposed to soaring and swooping down on prey from the air. It's a type of eagle that hunts from a perch, which is why we tend to see them quite often, as opposed to a lot of the other eagles that they've got a thermal, they're going to be on the wing. And who can blame them? If I had that kind of freedom, three-dimensional aerial freedom, I'd try to be on the wing as much as possible too. It's actually sitting on a tree that looks like it might be down the power line road, and since the bird is there, we might as well take that road. I'm not, or haven't heard any more alarming. I haven't seen any tracks here on this road, Sandy Patch South. Family of magpie shrikes. Such a beautiful sound this time of the day, or any time of the day, but being so still, it's almost like it rings out, almost echoes. Goodbye, shrikes. Bird now calling. Oh, don't fly away. We seem to be having more luck with birds this morning, but it is rather cool and damp. Maybe if the sun warms things up a bit, we might start seeing some things crawling around. There was a black-headed oriole that was in this tree. Getting closer to the eagle. The closest we can get for now without it flying. I can try and get a bit closer. Slightly different angle. We were side onto it. Now it looks like we might be looking at from the back. But still, that very upright posture. And if we get a bit closer, we might be able to see the color of its eye, which is quite distinct. It'd be nice if we had better light, sunlight. Joanna in Arizona. Oh, it's going to fly any second now. Morning, Joanna. Arizona. African hawk eagle? No, it is not. They do have a lovely posture in a tree, the African hawk eagles. But that wasn't one. African hawk eagles tend to sit lower down in a tree. They don't sit so prominently out in the open. And they hunt on the wing. But they hunt as a pair, though. Piece of wood. Also long. Thanks for sending in an answer, even if it wasn't correct. It is an mostly brown eagle. The only color, the only pale part of this eagle were the underwings. But a fairly broad head. Another clue I can give you is that it had bare legs. It didn't have feathered legs. African hawk eagle has feathered legs because it's what we would call a true eagle, as opposed to this, which has bare legs. And I'll give you another clue. It had a yellow eye. Well, Raisa, I know that Raisa would have gotten that correct, so I'm going to wait for another answer because Raisa was right. Where's Sinead? Today's Monday. Sinead, New Zealand, where are you? Or Brian, maybe Brian and Heather in the UK, or Lynn in Canada, Sharon in Austria. Or Harley. Aha. So Joanne coming back with a second answer. You still get it right. Doesn't matter if it's your 10th answer, you still get it right. Joanne in Arizona. But the brown snake eagle. Thanks, Raisa. Thanks, Joanne. Thanks, everyone. Now, next question. Mine or yours? Next question, where do we go from here? We're on Sandy Patch. We're back at Sandy Patch. Done some big loops this morning. Time to do another one. Visit a different area, slightly different vegetation maybe, and see what else is moving about. Just here Monday morning. None of us really know it's a Monday because it was pretty much the same as yesterday. Pretty much the same feeling, not the same thing. Oh, what's that? Parrot duiker running away. see something? No. Oh look, there's a wild cotton. You see the white puffballs of the wild cotton, the mallow family, same family as the hibiscus. There were some hibiscus flowers out just after the rain. Haven't seen any this morning yet, but we maybe need to get to a different soil type. This is the mallow family, wild cotton. Not a very big harvest this year. Well, you can, I guess, farm it. Question coming in from Final Control. It doesn't produce as much cotton as the commercial varieties of cotton, and being a wild cotton, it would probably sow quite easily, but I don't think there would be much of a market. And of course, because it's not as densely packed cotton around the seed as commercial cotton, probably not really viable. But it could be harvested, and you could spin it into thread. I've stretched it into thread before, not used it as thread, but you could. Question coming from Oxford, from Tom. If we get caracal in the area. We do, Tom. I haven't seen caracal here at Djuma, even in the old days, not to my knowledge. I don't recall seeing a caracal at all. I would imagine they would occur here. I haven't even found tracks that I would guess at being caracal. Only track that would be similar, I suppose, would be the likes of a very young leopard, but even then it would probably be a little bit fatter than a caracal. It might also be a little bit too dense in places. They are more of an open grassland type cat, preferring slightly different. Well, this is fairly good caracal habitat here. It's just that it's not a very large area of this kind of habitat. Short grasses, boree thickets. I must find out whether there have been any sightings of caracal. There are also bigger open areas in Buffelshoek north of us where they might occur more frequent, or rather they might be more likely to occur. Go and have a look. These caracal live pretty much similar to leopards, in that being solitary cats to a large extent, they have territories. Males will have larger territories to encompass females. I don't really know much about caracal. I don't ever get to see caracal. I'd like to stop and have a quick look at Sydney's dam, the big dam on Whittleswood. I can see the fish eagles down there. Just in case something else is out in this open area. That bird has got a full crop. I noticed it was sitting in the tree above the dam with its wings hanging, just like its mate is doing. And once again, flown to this tree, wings hanging. I think they've been fishing, and they're wet. But it looked like it had a full crop when it was flying over this way. It'd be really nice if the mate comes over and flies into this tree. We might be able to just roll down the hill using gravity drive and get a little bit closer. Very beautiful eagles. They are sea eagles, essentially, fishing eagles. Very similar to the sea eagles up in Skye or Norway, or the bald eagle in North America. Sea eagles in Australia, and quite typical of the sea eagles, the white head, white tail. They have been visiting, the same pair has been visiting Gari Dam, Djuma Dam, or Djuma Waterhole. Be interesting when they were last seen on the camera there. We did hear them yesterday morning. We heard them on Djuma. They quite often they sleep on trees around Zoe's Road for the night. I'm going to need to move out of the way of this car. But let's just see if that fish eagle stays in the tree with this vehicle coming by. And maybe we can get a little closer to it. Just gonna stop and say hello. Oh, schön.
Schön, ja, wir kommen dann noch gekommen.
Kabaka. It would have been great if they would call too at the moment, because in this morning air, off he goes. But as it flies, you can see that bulge just under its neck, and that is just full of fish. Maybe that's what we call the crop, sort of pre-digestion in the crop. Well, that was very, very interesting. If the other one's going to follow, we could wait all day for it to follow. It was probably their juvenile as well that was visiting in the beginning of summer when we started our drive, November, December last year. It was probably their offspring, their juvenile, that was hanging around Gowrie Dam quite a lot. Replay. Deborah in Canada was very, very observant. Thanks for the email, Deborah. Saying there was a bird underneath the eagle in the tree. I didn't see it. Wanting to know if it was a parrot. You know, I'm going to have to look at a screen cap of that, Deborah, when I get back from drive this morning. Because I only had eyes for the eagle. Else so much. There's such majestic birds. They're iconic African eagles. Their call is I know a number of people who've got that call on their cell phone as a ringtone. Something like that. Very, very difficult to get that call right. Sorry, did I just blow all your speakers out of their sockets? Well, apart from the flower that's here, that's growing in amongst this wood, I'm looking at something white on that guarri bush in the background. Everything white catches my eye. You can see with that fish eagle flying, you can see how white is such a noticeable color. Very interesting. That is the pupa of a very special wasp. I've shown you this before, but I know there are probably viewers that haven't seen this, so I'm going to go and fetch it if they've emerged. You know how caterpillars, I suppose there are a few moth or butterfly caterpillars that are able to all pupate together. There's some of the moths, and some of the moths mostly, that are communal caterpillars and they'll all pupate together. But generally they're a lot bigger than these. Now I'm going to put them here against the steering wheel where you can see they've all hatched. I can see the holes in pretty much all of them, where the little cap has been opened and the insect has become an adult and it has flown away, a flying adult. Now these are not eggs, these are silk cocoons. You've got something, that's the stick, the dark in the middle there. It's just the stick showing through. And these are a wasp species that, as larvae, they were actually eating out the inside of a caterpillar of a moth. The caterpillar would have been about this big. And it probably would have swallowed the eggs of this wasp who would have laid an egg. I mean, if you imagine that these tiny little capsules, which are all of, what's that, just over a millimeter, maybe a millimeter and a half, 2 millimeters at the most, how each one of those little cocoons has produced an adult insect. So the egg of that thing is so tiny that it actually gets swallowed by the caterpillar, and then the larva of the wasp hatches out inside the caterpillar, and they actually start eating it alive. And it still carries on eating, and then the larva of this wasp just eventually affect the caterpillar in such a way, especially when they get to the brain. I know it sounds gruesome, but it is. This is science fiction in real life. This is weird stuff. But anyways, it affects the brain that the caterpillar doesn't spin a cocoon, because if the caterpillar were to spin a cocoon, then these adult wasps would probably get stuck, because it would be a much heavier, much denser type of silk. So it affects the brain so that the caterpillar doesn't spin a cocoon, and then they, as larvae, will hatch out of the back of the dead caterpillar, and then they will, as they hatch out as larvae, they turn into a pupa and they spin their own cocoons, and it's only about 24 to 36 hours later that they become adults. Very fast metamorphosis, what we call a parasitic or superparasitic wasp. See, there's another type of wasp, a parasitic wasp, that will just inject an egg into the body of a caterpillar or other insects. Sometimes there are parasitic wasps that will just lay an egg on the body of a spider, and that larva will then burrow into and eat that prey alive virtually. This type of little wasp that I've just shown you, being a what we call super parasitic wasp, is most often it's there to eat the larva of the wasp that is already eating the larva of the moth. So it's a parasite within a parasite within a host. Strange stuff. Well, it's not a parasite, it's just a parasitic action. The radio has been fairly quiet, game drive wise. I might have to go south a little bit. Clouds getting a bit thicker, so much for the sun burning it open. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen in a hurry. while. This is our northern boundary. And then we'll start heading south. Oh, I forgot to plug in again. Sorry about that. Wondering why I'm not hearing anything on the radio. Oh, interesting question from California, from Sarah. Morning, Sarah. Do we get crowned eagle here? I mean, crowned eagle. Not really, no. When I say not really, because we don't have the habitat for crowned eagles. Crowned eagles are forest eagles. They are specially adapted to their forest environment with tall trees. In fact, they're specialist eagles. They hunt. They are primate hunters. They've got incredibly large talons for the size of the eagle, and they've also got very, very broad wings. Apart from being one of the biggest eagles, it's one of the biggest wingspans. The depth, the width of their wings are exceptionally broad to give them a lot of lift to be able to take things off of the forest floor or out of trees and lift up through the forest canopy and fly away with them back to the nest. I believe there has been a crowned eagle seen in the Sabi Sand before. I will check with Scott and Brent and Steph to see what they have to say about it. We've all had different experiences here in the Sabi Sand, but I've never seen a crowned eagle here, and I don't really expect to. Here in Djuma we don't have the tall trees and the kind of habitat that crowned eagles prefer. Out here we get the cousin of the crowned eagle, the martial eagle, which is a more open country, large eagle. Morning stations, any update for Gary? Oh, what was that? I wonder. Maybe just a log. Maybe just a log. Oh, just a log.
Very convincing log.
Yeah. Nearly looked like the back of an elephant. Go down on Vuga Road towards Gari Dam. Take some, come in. My timbers on buffles up. Didn't copy, could you repeat please? Not copying either of you, but thanks. Also Nyoni at Tonguti Dam. tracks here. Morning, Gary. Gary in Nebraska, if we have any dry riverbeds at the moment and if any of them will be flowing. We do have dry riverbeds. None of them are flowing at the moment, Gary. In fact, we are running parallel to a riverbed right now. We're not going to see it just yet, but we are running parallel to it. Quite dense vegetation in this riverbed. It is known as the Mulwati River. It's the one that feeds Gowrie Dam. It's the one that has that brings water in the wet season when it's flooding. There are several others that flow into the Mulwati. Further east is the Mulwanini, and further west is the Manyaleti River. But it takes a lot of rain to get these riverbeds flowing. And even though we had a good rain just recently, it still wasn't enough. Mostly what happens is, for your first few rainfalls, you need to have a lot of rain soaking into the ground so that it becomes almost saturated. And then every rainfall you get after that, the more you get, the more it becomes runoff. And it starts off just in small drainage lines, or just small little eroded areas that eventually build up into bigger drainage lines, and they end up running into bigger riverbeds, creek beds, and eventually they become a lot wider, like the Mulwati, the sandy riverbed of the Mulwati. But it needs at least, look at some kudu. It needs a lot of rain. It needs well over a couple of 100 millimeters to get them flowing strongly. Oh, don't run away, children. Morning, Mr. Kudu. Thank you, Gary. Sending an email. Must have sent it to questions@wildearth.tv. There's a little boy kudu. Young bull. Horns just beginning to emerge out of the top of his head. Quite well spread out. I can see at least 4 or 5 of them actually. Although only parts of them easy, they're so well spread out, it is quite dense vegetation. Can't quite see the rest of the group. It looks like a couple of the cows further down. And these are just 2 of the youngsters that have stayed up here. The females have moved lower down. But we can't really see them. Unfortunately, the bushes are rather dense. Very young one, this one. Probably only a few months old. fish eagle is calling. Probably the same fish eagle that came from the dam flew this way. I'm wondering if they haven't got a nest somewhere here on Djuma. I think it's something we need to investigate later today. Morning, Shanae. Wanting to know how long it takes for kudu, these little boys, for them to reach full size with their horns. About 6 years for kudu horns to reach full, or for bull to reach full grown. The white tips, Shanae wants to know what the white tips signify, what the white tips are about. Well, it's only really when they're adult one sees the white tips. And I guess it's from sharpening, it's from it's where the keratin thins out, and I suppose it's no, it won't be the bone underneath, but it's, I don't know, it doesn't signify anything to my knowledge, As far as I know, I'm open to any information if there is any study that has been done, or anybody's got any ideas and written about them as to why the nyala and other spiral-horned antelope have white tips to their horns, other than, of course, the way the markings on the face and the tail are used in flag signaling and being able to talk to each other, but we'll talk to each other with body language, I mean. But not to my knowledge, there's no real purpose to the white tips of kudu horns or nyala horns. Let's move along. I want to see if we can find some other things. Maybe we'll find some nyala bulls and we can have a look. It's different for nyala. Nyala have completely. Here's a crassula flower, by the way. Another flower for this morning. Nyala have a very different way of doing things. So for nyala, it's all about display rather than the physical action of fighting. Kudu aren't like that at all. Beautiful. Although they're very, very tiny little yellow flowers, it is quite a pretty end of season flower of the crassula. You can hear some go-away birds shouting. Maybe we need to investigate. Morning, Donna wants to know what Mvubu means. Evidently I said something on the radio about Mvubu. Mvubu Road. Yes, that's what I said. Morning, Donna. Mvubu is the word for hippo. Now this road was originally a hippo track. Hippos, when they go from water to water, they have very specific pathways. And evidently this was originally a hippo path that became a road. In fact, here we can see exactly what I'm talking about, where the hippos have actually made a separate path to the road. You can see this pathway just to the right, behind my hat. Let me point you straight at it. I guess it's easier for me to see. I don't know if it really comes across quite as much as I'd like it to, but where am I? Here. Hippo pathways, very typically, because of the way they shuffle, are quite wide, and you often find like a little patch of grass in the middle of the pathway where their feet don't touch. But this is probably the original pathway, and the road sort of found its way maybe on and off of the path. So, Mvubu means hippo, Donna. This is Hippo Road, as we call it, Mvubu Road. Look at those birds. No, they'll fly away. Mouse birds. Very hard to get mouse birds. As soon as they see us, they fly. They have very long tails. They live in families and they have very long tails. And that's just their habits. They clamber around bushes. The way they feed. They feed on berries and things. And with those long tails, the way they clamber about in bushes after berries and seeds, they give the appearance of being like mice. They're also a grey colour like mice. Coming up to Gowrie Dam, Tuma Waterhole. And for any of you who might be joining us for the first time, my name is Mark. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Brian on camera with me this morning. Nikki's back in final control. This is WildEarth. We're at Djuma Game Reserve, and this is our sunrise drive. We are probably going on for about, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe about mid-drive, about 8 a.m. here Central African time on a Monday morning. And if you doubt whether we're live, you're welcome to send a tweet to #SafariLive, or if you'd like, you can send an email to questions@WildEarth.tv and I can answer them. I can also say hello to you wherever you may be in the world. Let me know where it is, by the way, and show you that we are broadcasting live from a vehicle in the middle of the bush. Interesting bird around the edge of the water there on the far side. Other than that, not much here at Djuma Waterhole. See, the sun hasn't come out yet, so the buffalo aren't bothered about the flies and the heat, so they're not here yet. But normally there would be buffalo lying around in the mud. Okay, for the birders out there, #SafariLive, or if you want to send an email just with the name in the subject, questions@WildEarth.tv. What bird is that? I want to head south now. We've been concentrating in the western sort of northern area, not much happening. So if we head south, maybe I'll be able to get Arathusa on the radio and see what's happening over on Arathusa Safari Lodge, as we might be able to cross over and see if they found anything interesting this morning. Hello camera, hello zoomies, whoever's on zoomie at the moment. Oh, that load of impala, all sticking their tails. Some lying down, very relaxed impala. That means that there's not likely any predators about. But that's also not necessarily so, because predators need to be very secretive. What's up, Drongo? Making such a lovely sound. Morning, children. Wow, look at you, all over the place. Joanne and Heather and Jody. I wonder, Heather maybe Alaska, Jody New Mexico, Joanne Arizona. I'm guessing your places. All saying the woolly-necked stork. That's what it was. It was a woolly-necked stork. Quite a lively bunch this morning, this lot. Feeding. Much like the kudu. Now, feed. Oh, going to start stutting. The little ones. I was hoping they'd have a little bit of energy to do something like that, but maybe if we wait a little bit. Stutting, it's a particular type of pronking type of thing, but it's not quite pronking. It's a particular way that they run, a very stiff-legged bounce, really. and the youngsters often do that. And see those two little boys in the background, their horns are only just coming out. I would imagine it must be quite painful having those little horns come out and having this desire to spar, especially now as we get close to the rutting season, and they must jab each other with those horns. The one on the left looking a little bit bigger than the one on the right, so it's definitely dominating him already. This is where it starts. This is where the hierarchy amongst these little boys begins to settle, or not settle, but begins really, so that as they start growing, they're sparring with each other, they're learning each other's moves, they're also learning each other's weaknesses, and so that in a year's time, when they're pushed out into the bachelor herds, they can at least cope a little bit. But it'll be a couple of years before they actually have to spar for real. Yes, I want to try. No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. There we go. There's a bit of a stot. Flashing the white tail over the back. Nice one, Brian. Oh, good follow there. Can actually see the big ram coming down. I want to see if there's going to be any rutting behavior out of him. Yeah, it comes, and it looks like he's going to start herding the group that's on our right. Already he's showing a little bit of posture, and a lot of the females are now starting to move to the main bulk of the group. And excuse me, I'm just listening to the radio. Okay, just stuff happening off of our boundaries. But see, very interesting how the appearance of this ram has changed the behavior completely. The whole herd now. Starting to move. And maybe as the day wears on, they move into the deeper cover. Some alarming going on from grey go-away birds. It sounds like the way they call for an eagle. Because they're calling, I can hear go-away birds calling over a very wide area. But it might be wise for us to go up onto quarantine and have a look. Not as intensive as it's going to be getting in the next couple of weeks, with the rams chasing the females and chasing away other rams. And still one or two impala that have to come out and join the rest of the herd. But with these birds shouting, I want to go and have a look what's happening towards quarantine. So instead of taking Twin Dams Road, we'll take maybe Weaver's Nest and Philemon's Cut Line or something and head over towards Arathusa. I haven't seen anything in the sky now. That alarming that the birds are doing now, the go-away birds, it's a sort of quite a wide area. It's somewhat similar to what happens when the African hawk eagles come over my house, or come around my house. They don't really come over. African hawk eagles tend to fly treetops level. These birds aren't shouting. We've got a couple of starlings and a couple of go-away birds here who are not saying anything. But they haven't seen whatever it is the other ones are complaining about. And the starlings can also get quite vocal if they need to. Two go-away birds up at the top and the two blue starlings down below at Birchall starlings. You see, the go-away birds are quite spread out. They're all over the place. And oh, here comes a wildebeest. Oh, and now you're calling. What? What? The impala aren't taking much notice. As I started moving, they started calling. But I was saying, you know, they're quite spread out. Oh, look at the impala. Maybe we shouldn't be leaving them. Because the male's just suddenly gone into full rut mode. Chasing female. Let me get a better position, Brian. But I was hoping we might be watching earlier when we got here. Stay down here in the open if there are any eagles flying. Keep our ears open for. Thinking maybe it's best to go back down to Twin Dams Road. Down the bottom, he's down there. Seems to be trying to herd them all together, but he seemed to have chosen one particular female. Some of them are starting, some of them are running around. But then he went after one female, and the rutting noise, you wouldn't imagine such a pretty little antelope can make such a noise. So, let's see. Try this again. Here he is, just off to our left. I'm going to park like this. So that Brian's got a full view. He just will do some more running and action and action. It's all quiet now, no more alarming. What I was trying to get at is that the go-away birds are spread out over different trees over a wide area, and when several of them are calling, they can't possibly be calling for a ground predator, because they all call simultaneously, and it can only be something from the air, aerial predator, that they would be seeing. But he has stopped now. I've just seen, can hear some babblers babbling, and I looked that way, there was a monkey jumping through the tree. Now that would be also a very good giveaway, because monkeys have got such great eyesight, and they would be both looking up and down for predators. Here comes a train of thought, a train of wildebeest. making their way down. I can see the herd of impala. They've heard them running around and no doubt decided to come and spend time around here because safety in numbers. If the impala are making a noise and running around, they're the first ones that are going to get caught by something because they're so preoccupied. And the wildebeest do like these shorter grasses. They've just come off the open area we call quarantine, so it might be an idea to still head up that way and go and see what might be up there. One calf with this group reminds me of the calf we used to have at Thornybush we called Billy.
I remember Billy.
Billy no mates. Oh, nearly tripped. There, we've had our own mini migration this morning. And there's still one more behind us actually. The big bull trying to convince the girls, please don't go. Morning, Mr. Gnu. Keep note of his shoulder stripes. Maybe we'll be able to recognize him just by those lovely stripes on his shoulder.
Very nice.
It's very nice. Anne-Marie asks if impala rams get injured when they're sparring during the rutting season. Anne-Marie, generally not, although it can happen. There are all sorts of, I suppose, mechanisms. It's not the right word, but there are all sorts of things in play that happen. Oh, what was that? That starling just... some bird. Something that was being chased by a starling that came zooming around us. I don't know where it went. Could have been a small raptor. Could account for these birds shouting. If there's a small raptor here that's hunting birds. Impala rams injuring themselves during rutting. Well, that hierarchy that I was talking about, these young rams that for the next year, from now until the next rut, are still going to be allowed to stay with their moms, stay with the family groups or the breeding herd. And amongst themselves they spar, but by next year when they become just over a year old, or about 18 months old, they will be pushed out into the bachelor herds. And they will have to fall in, basically, with the existing hierarchy. And as they grow, they spar and they get to learn about each other. So that when it comes to the actual rut, there's going to be a difference in strength between the males. And normally, because of this hierarchy that exists, a lower ranking male will give way to an older male or a higher ranking male because they already have sorted their differences out, so that a fight doesn't get to be where it can be dangerous or where they get injured. But having said that, in every instance of every animal that goes through the process of males vying for the attention of females, there is always going to be matching testosterone levels. Males that are so equally matched that neither one wants to give way, neither one wants to relent or relinquish control, and so the fights can get to be very dangerous. I've seen a fight where impalas have, in fact we've had it here on the open area a few years ago, two males that were so intent on ousting each other that they got locked up, their horns got locked up, they became very, very tired from all the struggle, and it can actually lead to both of them dying if they can't unlock their horns, which has happened even to kudu in the past. Because kudu can also get quite intense with each other. But generally, because they spend time in bachelor herds, they spar with each other and they get to know each other so that the fights don't get so severe. I had an instance up in Tanzania where the fight got so intense that the horn broke off in the neck of the other male as they were fighting, and how it happened that the horn could break, because it's bone, it's part of the skull, it's solid material, it's very difficult to break an impala horn, but somehow this happened, and somehow it was embedded in his neck. And of course it fell out eventually, or would have. I didn't never get to see him again, or if I did, I wouldn't have known it was him. And I'm sure, because it was only in the muscle, I'm sure it probably would have been quite painful for a while. But when I saw him, he was feeding fine, he was carrying on as though there was nothing there. It, over 12 inches of impala horn embedded in his neck. Other injuries, of course, do occur. Lewis in Buffalo. I'm assuming, Lewis, you're talking about the wildebeest, wanting to know if all the females have brown foreheads. These are hyena tracks going up and down Phillipston. Wanting to know if all the females have brown foreheads. Yes, generally they do, but the older females does tend to get quite dark. The young wildebeest and the females have brown foreheads. I think I'm going to need to put my jacket on. It's actually colder now than it was earlier this morning. Billy Joe, thanks for the question. I wanted to know how big that herd of impala was. It's quite difficult to say because they were spread out, and some of them were in the bush below the dam wall. So I would say it's probably a good 50 strong, maybe, but at least about 50. Perhaps later this afternoon, because it's the same herd that we see out on the open area of quarantine. Perhaps it's the same herd that will be out there later. Maybe if they're all in the open, maybe I can count them. Morning, Jilly. Do we have a copy in this RV sand? No, we don't, Jilly. A copy only occur in West Africa. Brent, I think, can tell you about a copy. He's lived in those places. He's had a lot of experience there. The only other mammal that's related to giraffe would be a copy, a very strange-looking animal. I've never seen one. I've never been to that part of the world. There's a warthog. There goes a warthog. A warthog that has lost his tail. No tail is there. Hello, warthog. Warthog. No. This is rather a skittish warthog. Did it stop?
Yeah, it's just
behind the tree.
Yeah. What are the chances this is the warthog from earlier?
Well, it was on Zoe's straight line. Could possibly. Quite a deep curve to the tusk. One of the things about male warthogs is that their tusks don't curve as sharply as the females, but he did have quite a curve to his tusks. Excuse me. Philemon's cut line, we're heading west, and then a little bit south, and then a little bit west, till we get to Arathusa.
No, it's still there.
It's still there?
Yeah, it's still there.
Just see the tusks moving. Grey shape and tusks. If we only could see the face, I'd be able to show you. There we go. Stop in the open for me.
Stop right behind that big clump.
One of the differences, one of the features of boars versus the sow are the warts on the face. The male has 2 pairs of warts on the face. Oops. Still can't quite get to see his face. It keeps looking off to the side though, as well as us. Let's see. Try and move a little bit forward. That might even be a big female. Only we can get a clearer view of. So the tusks are telling me female. The size also is quite a big one. Hard, very hard. Gosh. We might. Don't know yet if this is on only one, so I'm just trying to establish whether there are others around. Now it's starting to walk, so it's starting to calm down a little bit. But it has been running up and down. And the way it's looking about tells me it could be looking for other individuals. Typically you'll find a female with her offspring and her previous year's offspring, 2 different generations, where her older kids help her with the new kids. And you'll find a boar will have an area where he encompasses several females and then covers several females. So it's not easy to tell what the composition is. There are some big termite mounds here too, which is possibly where they're denning. There it is now. Maybe a nice view. I see something else grey. It might be wood. Now that is a female. Let me try and get that opening better for you. There. Oh. That might be able to get a better view of her face. At first I thought it was a boar because it was so far in the bush and the way it was running. Ordinarily she would have or should have piglets with her. You don't really get a very tight curve to the tusks of a boar. Tusks are normally a much more open curve, flatter.
Would that affect those little tusks?
Yes, because the tusks, the lower jaw tusks that Brian's talking about, are the same curve to some degree. They're self-sharpening. As the warthog chews, the lower tusks ride on the underside of the upper tusks, and it wears them to a very, very sharp point. I don't have any tusks here. I got the beautiful skull at home, but I thought of bringing tusks, but then I don't really want to be travelling with warthog tusks between game reserves. Being misunderstood. That I want to use them for show and tell purposes. Sometime, maybe because we're heading to Arethusa, maybe we'll bump into those warthog at Arethusa's airstrip, and they're a lot more relaxed, but we can get maybe a bit closer to them. But sometimes when they're eating, you can actually see the lower tusk. Now the tusks of warthogs are actually their canine teeth, as opposed to, say, the tusks of the elephant, which are their incisors rather than the canines. So we don't really know if she's alone. Don't know if she's got youngsters around somewhere. Didn't want to get out of bed on a cloudy day. Bye-bye, warthog. They have these protrusions, these wart-like protrusions on their face. Males have 2 pairs, the females only have 1 pair. I'm trying to think what that bird is, and I can't think of anything. here. More magpie shrikes. Yes, they might be shouting at something. They're looking down into this termite mound. Might be a snake or something in there.
Nice shot of them.
Pardon?
It's a nice shot of them.
It is very pretty. Never really thought of that gender wise. One more black, one more white. Let me see. Where is that? Station, what is the lock of them? Okay, copied. What umbrella is that? Okay, copied, thanks. Interesting. Must have been. Is there any update for Safari and Dow this morning? Confirm around the lodge. Okay, copied that, thanks. Just catching up with what's going on Arathusa. Interesting, yesterday morning Steph and I found lion tracks coming from Buffalo, where Sydney's dam is, crossing in front of the gate heading onto Simbambili. Evidently the groomers are there. I thought it was probably them. They're evidently on Simbambili at the moment. And there has been a sighting of Tingana out on the western side of Arathusa Safari, but unfortunately without a signal from that area. I'm not going to go that far. I do want to go onto Arathusa. Maybe we'd head up to the airstrip to see something different for this morning. Hello, Mr. Mala. Sorry, Mr. Mala. Oh, the rutting noise. Clearly must be chasing another ram. This is the sound we're going to be hearing a lot of in the next few weeks. Oh, there's mushrooms in this big. Those are called Japanese parasols. Tiny little feathery mushrooms. They're very, very delicate. They're probably less than half an inch wide.
Oh, they're tasty.
I don't think so. I'll tell you now whether they're edible or not. Parasols, they're called, or umbrellas. Okay, parasol mushroom. Let's see. There's several that are parasols. It's not that one, Leucocoprinus or Macrolepiota, the parasol mushroom, not that one. Then it could be the '44 is another one. Not that one. 62 and 56. Not that one. Not really that one. You see, I'm going to have to find it now. See, there's so many that look similar. It would take me a while. I would have to count things. To do it in the book and to do it now on Drive wouldn't really work. I just know that they are parasols. And I would have to go through and see distribution. There are, when it comes to mushrooms, they either grow on the ground in the open in grassland, or they grow under trees, in which case they might only grow under specific trees, or they will grow out of dung of certain animals, or they will grow out of rotting wood from certain trees. So there are different criteria. So sometimes you might find a mushroom that looks similar, and that is because they're different species and because they might have different habitats that they live in. So that wouldn't be the parasol that you might find, say, amongst the grasses, because it's a very specific mushroom that only grows in the midden of a grazing animal. The grasses that are decomposing, or that there may be an elephant. Interesting question from Genevieve in New York. The nitrogen in the dung, does it help the mushroom grow? Will they die when the dung dries out? Yes, they do. Mushrooms don't last very long. They are only really able to exist when it is warm and moist. In the dry season, as we go into the dry season, they are not going to be. Well, it depends actually. I'm sorry to use that again, but for these kind of mushrooms, they won't grow in dry dung. They will grow in dry dung. If it gets wet and they get the right conditions, the spores will germinate. It's got to be damp, it's got to be moist, typical mushroom conditions. So it could be old dung, but just being rehydrated by rain is enough to get mushrooms to grow. But they won't grow in the dry season out of dry dung. And having said that, there are mushrooms, there are fungi that grow on trees, bracket and shelf fungus, that grows on dead wood, that continue to grow year after year, and they become quite dormant, very woody. It's been looking, I guess I still need to find one. I have been looking, I just need to look harder. I'm gonna just, if you don't mind, folks. I'm just going to pause here when we get to the big road so that I can put my jacket on. It's getting a little bit chilly. I'm glad I brought it actually.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I normally put on a few layers underneath, and I just didn't do that today. I guess I was trying to be optimistic that the sun would clear up all the cloud and dry up all the rain. So you can see when see spider. Let's move along. I feel warmer, I feel better. How are you doing out there, everybody? Monday morning, Monday afternoon, still Sunday night. Hope you all had a good weekend, ready for the week coming. I'm getting ready for the week coming because I'm going to visit. Well, I'm going home to Timbavati, and then I'm going to visit my parents, who I haven't seen for 3 years. Getting way beyond time to see them. Looking forward to it. There's a small bachelor group of impala with the wildebeest. One ram, two very small rams. Now those little boys, you see how their horns are? They are recently ousted from the family group, from the breeding herd. They are probably going on about 18 months. Anywhere from 14 to 18 months. And a lone wildebeest bull who's probably lost his herd to the wildebeest we saw this morning earlier. But seeing the wildebeest has brought back memories of
a wildebeest we got to know quite well, and Charlie in Minnesota was asking a question about it. We had a wildebeest whose name was Brian's mom. We had a wildebeest calf whose name was Brian, and it was one of the calves that was one of the first calves to be witnessed being born on camera, and Brian was the cameraman then at the time. Oh, Brian, you should be telling the story. But Brian's mom sadly was killed by lion, and I managed to get the skull before the hyena tore it apart or changed its appearance. Now, she was a very particular wildebeest because she had a horn that flopped down the side of her face. She was a very distinct wildebeest, and that's why we could recognize her so easily. And I kept the horn, or rather the whole skull, because I felt it necessary to be able to then study it and see what it was that caused that horn to be that way. I'm going to try to move for a better view here. It's quite a classic shot, that the wildebeest with the two young impala rams, or the wildebeest bull and an impala ram together. Okay, you're supposed to look up, Mr. Wildebeest. So Charlie in Minnesota was asking what has happened to the skull, an update on the skull. Charlie, it still needs a bit of treatment. It's still pretty smelly. But maybe we can do something about it this afternoon. Because if I'm going on leave, we'll see. Maybe, if we can. I'll check on it and see if it's not too smelly and if it's not too gory, because it's been drying out for a long time now. I think it was in February, mid-February, around the 19th of February, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, there was a woodpecker pecking above us, but I didn't quite register. I've only registered now. As we drive away and it flies away. I was also thinking that maybe what I ought to do is, when we've looked at the skull and I've shown all of you what the skull looks like, that I would leave it. I would actually take it and we would do it at the place where she died, and then I will leave the skull there. But also I was thinking that maybe the owner of Juma might be interested in it, because it was a very interesting... At first I thought it was a deformity, but I'm now more convinced that instead of a deformity, it was a broken horn. And there's some interesting markings on it, and I'd like to share that with you all, because so many of the viewers were part of that whole saga of the wildebeest being born in November, watching these youngsters grow, and the herd out on quarantine every day, almost every day. And then the day when the little Brian went missing. That was a little traumatic, because we found lion, and we found that it must have been killed by the lion, because she was getting frantic. She was running up and down looking for it. She kept running back along the tracks where they had come from, because they had been elsewhere and they were coming back to quarantine. In fact, they were probably here at Arathusa, and they were in a straight line cutting through from here back to quarantine. And it was quite clear that she had lost her calf, and then it was only a matter of time before we came to the conclusion that one must have been eaten, because it was gone. And then only a few weeks later, same pride of lion came back again one night, and we found them eating a wildebeest on quarantine, and it turned out to be her. And it could well be that she was still preoccupied with looking for her calf, and that may be why she got taken, because she didn't have a calf anymore. She's looking for the calf.
not as vigilant as the cars who still have their cars.
Who knows? We don't know, because it was nighttime.
And a big surprise when I noticed the skull when we saw the kill. Need to talk on the radio now. Morning stations, Mark coming over to the west. Mark, go ahead. Okay, copy, thanks. So they don't have Tingana, and the Kahumas have moved north onto what is known as Simbambili, a neighbouring property. So we can't go to the Kahumas. So we'll find something for ourselves coming onto Arathusa. Especially just want to get up to the airstrip. Go and see what the rain, if the rain maybe flushed it green a little bit. Carol in Florida was asking how I would treat the skull, because I did mention that I was going to try and treat the skull. Carol was asking if I would boil it or how I would treat it. Unfortunately, we've got a very small kitchen, so it wouldn't really happen in the kitchen, because that smell would permeate the kitchen. We do have a fireplace, but I don't have a pot big enough. We do have very big pots, but they're used for cooking. And I don't know if anybody would appreciate me using the cooking pots to boil a skull, even if it's kind of the same thing. What I was hoping to do, but I couldn't get either, well, I suppose I could get detergent, but for me it would have been a mixture of detergent and chlorine or bleach. Bleach to kill bacteria, detergent to break down fatty tissue. But I've also left it in a place where I put it in a place where hyena won't get it, because even though we live in a sort of a compound area, the hyenas still sometimes get in there. We have hyena tracks in our courtyard quite often in the morning, and I get up a couple of times during the night. I've never really seen it. The only thing I've seen in our courtyard was a bushbuck one day. Morning, Starling. Yes, fine, and you? Thank you. I got a message from Final Control saying that everybody there is also glad that we didn't boil the skull. Yes, I can remember my brother and my sister-in-law bought a beautiful farm down in the Cape. Now, I came back from Tanzania and got in my Land Rover, did the 3-day journey down to the Cape to go and visit them. And on the way to visit them, I found a mongoose, a Cape Grey mongoose. And I'm very interested in skulls. And it horrified my sister-in-law, who is quite fresh out of the US. Although she'd been on safari a few times, she had moved to South Africa with my brother. And brother-in-law arrives from a game reserve in Tanzania, and the first thing he does is take one of her good pots to boil a mongoose skull. She still hasn't forgiven me for that one. I find
skeletons, interesting. I've got insect skeletons. I've got a collection of different vertebrae at home, from the smallest of snakes and lizards to the biggest mammals. We've got elephants and rhino and giraffe. I've got all these vertebrae, and it's this. There's a commonality to it that intrigues me. We are all made of the same stuff, and what goes further in my mind from that is, how is it that we are all made of the same thing, that we as humans can dominate and destroy so much of what is made up of the same, of nature, and we're all part of it, we're all connected, we're all part of the same energy that drives it, and yet somehow there are humans on this planet that just have no regard for it whatsoever. It's so that's part of it. Skulls I find intriguing because of dental formula, because of how muscles are attached to the skulls, and how things look in life and how things look in death. You know, the insects, it's fairly easy because the skeleton is on the outside. So an insect pretty much looks the same as it does outside, whether it's alive or dead. I need to fix my mushroom. It's broken. Lynn in Canada, in Toronto, was asking I think that question. I'm going to probably have to get back closer to Juma because it sounds like the radio is getting a little... Oh, Donna. Sorry, Donna. The warts on the warthog? Bone, or... They're not bone. They're not part of the skull. They're fleshy protrusions more than anything else. There they are, that family of warthogs. Good, I'm glad they're here, because maybe we can get to see them. However, first I have to say hello to somebody. Whoa! Not watching the road. Sorry, Brian, you still there? I'm just going to say greetings to one of the Arathusa vehicles. Always good to meet and greet. Morning. How you said?
Hey, Mark.
Very good, and you? Good morning, all. Great.
Good.
Bit chilly this morning. What?
It is.
Yeah.
Not the greatest, but listen, if you know, there is a secretary bird on the southern side there.
Oh.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and there's also another thing. I think the guys will give you an update. It sounds like Tingana.
Yeah, I heard it was 7 meet and greet. Morning. How you said?
Hey, Mark.
Very good, and you? Good morning, all. Great.
Good.
Bit chilly this morning. What?
It is.
Yeah.
Not the greatest, but listen, if you know, there is a secretary bird on the southern side there.
Oh.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and there's also another thing. I think the guys will give you an update. It sounds like Tingana.
Yeah, I heard it was road 7
Yeah,
at
but that's on
Tambuti.
Arendal.
Huh?
It's on Arendal.
Yes, but it's so far west I don't get signal there.
Is it? Oh, okay.
For now. I'd love to go and see him.
Got to stamp the passport to get stuff. Okay, but try to go for the 6 trees up and down.
Okay.
That side, looks like,
Have you seen this crown plover nest here somewhere? Just here on the junction?
No, negative. Have you?
The last time I was here, yes.
Maybe if you do see it, will you please put maybe rocks around it to circle it?
Yeah, okay.
That'll be just in case the guys start cutting shortcuts in.
Yeah, no, it was fairly well camouflaged, but Okay. Now, I wonder, to find something like this is very difficult. And I don't know, maybe.
Not further on.
Makanda, Nyon. See you, Roy. Bye. So, I hope you can see them, and it just goes to show how well camouflaged they are. Adults don't have to be on them all the time. But let's move on. I don't want to be here because maybe she wants to come back to the nest. There is a crowned plovers feeding just off to our right. We're going up to the top end of the airstrip, and then we're going to come back down this way, and then we're going to go and see the warthogs. But because there are these vehicles, they're probably going to be looking at those warthogs. There's evidently something special down this end. And also I can see a wildebeest skull leaning against a tree down there, and I want to go past that because then maybe I can show you something on that. That will help when we do get to see Brian Mom's skull because of the differences of the two. Now, there's a bird down here. Cedric said there was a bird down here that is a very interesting bird we've been asked about on a number of occasions. And I'm hoping I can still find it, hoping it's still here. Should be big enough to be seen. But I'm not seeing it.
There.
Whereabouts?
Straight down there. See the state tree?
Yeah.
It's behind there.
Oh, I can just see it walking there now. We might be able to, it's gone south of Arathusa, so I can't go and follow it. But maybe we can get a view of it through the gap. It's moving a little bit that way.
Yeah.
It's difficult to see through all this guarri thicket. And it's walking fast, because they do walk fast. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. It's a secretary bird. It's a very large bird of prey, a very distinctive bird of prey. One category all on its own. Walks through the grassland, but very well padded and especially adapted feet for killing its prey with its feet.
it is. Just gonna have to get a quick glimpse of it. I don't want it to fly or anything. Quite a stunning bird, very long legs. It has what look like black leggings on, and it has these quills, these lovely line of, you can see it looks like a black stripe down the back of the head. It looks like, and they are very long feathers. At the moment they folded back, but they look like maybe pencils that would stick out of the secretary's ear. I know it's very sexist. I didn't call it a secretary bird. It's been called a secretary bird forever. It's not. And that's because of the, I suppose, the notion that secretaries are mostly women. You can see the impala heading off behind it. They're in no danger, of course. Feeds on snakes, tortoises, small tortoises. If they find a nest hatching, they'll eat quite a few of them. I found a lot of baby tortoises at the base of a tree or underneath the trees where secretary birds nest. And that's about the best we're going to get to see of it, and I'm glad we did. Very interesting. They stab. They can kill snakes, even venomous snakes, by slamming them with their feet. They've got these very heavy padded feet. Well, not padded. They're like calloused. They're like clubs, big toes, and they have this manner of stomping on their prey. Of course, being a raptor, being a bird of prey, they have typical raptor-shaped beak, tearing at flesh, tearing at things. That was a surprise, because we've been asked about secretary birds on numerous occasions, and we've always had to say, well, you do get secretary birds here, but we don't have the open grassland for them. But they could occur on some of the open areas that we do have access to, and lo and behold, here is a secretary bird today. It makes it all worthwhile. Just found plovers, by the way. Parents, not the parents, but that's whose eggs those were, those lovely cryptically coloured eggs. I'm going to stop briefly now, shortly. There's a beautiful, this is Arathusa Safari now. There's a beautiful deck here. You can imagine something like this being used for, I suppose in the summer months it would be nice to sit up there when the buffalo pan, there's a pan here called buffalo pan, when buffalo pan has got water in, or even just during the day, just to see what comes out over this open area. But in past places where I've been managing camps and things, we have decks like this. We have people come out for meetings, for small conferences. Anyway, beautiful, very high deck. But there's something here that I noticed for the first time that I would like to talk to you about, because we've been asked about Brian Mom's skull. This is obviously a lion kill. Excuse me. A lot drier and older than Brian's mom's skull. Now, if you have a look at the base of the horn here, you can see that underneath this keratin is actual bone, and I suppose in some ways it looks similar to the antlers of a deer, but it is vastly different because this bone carries on all the way through the horns. What we have here on the horns, they look a little bit gross, but they're actually just the tubes from horn-boring moth. It's the larva of a very special, so bird's making a noise, very special moth larva that's only eats the keratin of the horns. And you can actually see on some of these lower ones, you can see where the moths have pupated. This is the pupa have come right out to the end of these tunnels, and they've actually pupated, and the moths have flown away. There's one here. Yeah, no, they're just the empty pupal cases. Now, what we have with Brian's mom is, I think it was her right horn, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What we have with Brian's mom, we're going to see the difference. I want you to take note of this because it's quite important. How the skull looks. I mean, it looks uniform. You can see how, you can imagine this flowing into, or rather the bone of the skull flowing into the inside of the horn, all joined together. And we're going to see a very distinct abnormality on Brian's mom's skull in this region over here. So just keep that in mind, and maybe this afternoon I'll be able to put that out there and show you this afternoon. This was quite a big wildebeest bull. Did I see something?
Something?
Rest in peace, or don't. Blaze across. What are they? The heavenly skies. Let's see if those warthogs are still around. Yes, looks like they are. Love it when a plan comes together. Plover's just flown off of her eggs again, so I'm not going to stop here. She needs to get back to her eggs. That's the crowned plover, the crowned lapwing, who is hoping to get back to her nest. Jillian, Wisconsin, was asking if I buried it in an anthill, would they help clean it up? Yes or no, Jilly? I think by anthill maybe you're thinking of termite mound, and termites wouldn't do anything to it. But yes, if there was an ant's nest, I could bury it near where ants live, and then, but not only the ants, there would be other insects that would feed on it, but those insects just aren't around at the moment. And I did think of leaving it maybe somewhere for ants to feed on, but it's just I didn't want hyenas to get it, so I was hoping that just the sun and the rain and the weathering, just like this one that we've been seeing now, just the weathering of it. Wonderful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All 7 piglets, plus the 2 adults. There's the big, that's one of the moms, that one there, that young, but she's a young female. This is the old girl that Brian is showing you now with her 1, 2, there's 5 there. There's 3 bigger ones and 4 smaller ones. And I think the smaller ones belong to the old lady. This is the old lady warthog. And the 3 bigger piglets belong to her daughter. That would be her daughter from a previous litter. That's the other female. And these little ones, miraculous that all 7 of them have still survived in an open area where there have been so many predators over the last, wild dog have been through here, leopard come through here regularly, including Shadow and her cub. Eagles, they are prime target for things like tawny or martial eagles, even maybe the odd python that they've come across. So miraculous how she's managed to keep, or both these females have managed to keep all 7 piglets healthy and strong. Quite remarkable. Now you can see just below her eyes, sorry Brian, just below her eyes are her pair of warts. The males have got 2 big warts lower down, closer to their tusks. And the warts are there also to help protect the eyes. She's got very, very small warts lower down on her snout where the male's big warts are. And I think these youngsters, I'm sure there are little boys amongst them. In fact, I can see a little boy, 2 little boys. I'm sure they might just be a little bit too young to see the warts on them. Not really. Hasn't got tusks yet, but that one that's just crossed the road, and the second one that crossed the road, two at the back are little boys, and one at the back on the left. He's even got a scar on his rump already. But they're already showing signs of their warts lower down on the snout, as young as they are. And they are adorable. I don't care what you say. They're not ugly. They are adorable little things. Going down on their wrists to feed like that shows that they're very comfortable. They wouldn't be down on their wrists if there was any hint of a threat or danger. People call them knees, but they're not knees, they're wrists. The outside of the wrist. Radio seems to be a bit crackly. Somebody was asking whether if one of the mothers were to die, would the other one raise the piglets? Under the circumstances, yes, but another unrelated female probably wouldn't raise another female's piglets, only if they were family directly related in the same burrow. It would be a very difficult thing. They're weaned by now. More than anything else, they just got to grow. So if anything were to happen to the mother now, the one thing that they would be more vulnerable, because they're more vulnerable to predation, because at the moment she knows more about the dangers out here than any of them do. Picking up on all the signs that we listen out for, signs that she will know much better than we will ever know. You see how every now and then they'll lift their heads and listen.
Rena's asking what age, and thanks for the tweet, Rena. Wonder what age these youngsters would start getting their tusks. They would probably, even now, their tusks are growing. It will be a matter of whether we'll be able to see them. Unfortunately, they're grazing closer to us. Maybe it is not protruding beyond the lip yet, but the teeth would be there. Their tusks would be growing already. First time you see them is probably only by the time they are going on a year, 10 months to a year. They're probably going on 6 months now, these little ones. Born in, or 5 months. 4 to 5 months. They were born in December, early December. Tusks, very much like elephants, are somewhat genetic in terms of how big they are. And they are used as tools. The upper tusks are used for digging, they're used to help with feeding, as well as, of course, with the boars for fighting. But their lower tusks, and if you look at this young female, the younger mom, because she's quite close, as she's feeding, you can actually see that lower tusk as she moves her jaw, and just in the right position where you can actually see how that lower tusk rides on the underneath of the upper tusk. And when they need to use that lower tusk as a weapon, photobombed by the child. Like, don't you dare talk about my mother's mouth like that. They will use those lower tusks to help defend themselves. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of flashes of white tails way down the bottom end of the airstrip. I think it's just predator draw. Impalas running around like they were at Gowrie Dam. Cool temperatures, they have a bit of energy to burn. Well, it's been a lovely morning. We've had some really nice bird sightings, and I think, of course, the highlight of all is seeing that secretary bird. It's a very unusual bird to see. I don't know if it's almost like we saw ostriches a few years ago, and very unusual in that we did see them. But to have a secretary bird here is very special. We might be lucky enough to see that again one of these days. But for now, however, that's probably about the highlight for me. Had a lovely morning. I mean, the birds have been great. The warthog, it was so great to see the one that we didn't see so well, and thinking of these and coming to see these warthog. Far as the other bigger animals are concerned, we're going to hopefully look for those this afternoon. I'm hoping that also, I'll see if we can bring out Brian's mom's skull, the wildebeest skull, and we can chat about that as well. So I should be out this afternoon, and I should be seeing you all at about 3 o'clock Central African time. Thanks to Brian on camera, and thanks to Nikki back in Final Control. My name is Mark, and we're going to sit and watch this family of warthogs come by.
Plucking the grass. Vest. You can hear them plucking the grass.